The Manhattan skyline glittered behind frosted windows as Nina Gallagher stood frozen on the sidewalk outside Celestine, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Her breath formed small clouds in the November air, and her threadbare burgundy jacket offered little protection against the biting wind. The fabric had once been beautiful, but time and hardship had faded its color and worn through the elbows. Her brown boots, scuffed and cracked, had carried her through countless nights on cold streets. Nina clutched a crumpled napkin in her trembling hand. Written on it was an address and a time, given to her by a volunteer coordinator at the shelter where she sometimes stayed. The woman had insisted Nina deserved something good, something unexpected. Against every instinct screaming that she did not belong in places like this, Nina had come. Through the glass doors, she could see crystal chandeliers casting rainbow prisms across white tablecloths. Men in pressed suits and women draped in pearls moved through the space like dancers in a choreographed performance. Nina touched her tangled auburn hair, suddenly aware of how she must look. Her fingers were rough from cold, her nails broken from work. She had scrubbed her face in a public restroom, but knew the exhaustion still showed in the dark circles beneath her green eyes. The door swung open as a couple exited, releasing a wave of warmth and the rich aroma of roasted herbs and butter. Nina's stomach clenched with hunger, but also with something deeper, fear, perhaps, or the terrible knowledge that she was about to step into a world that had long ago decided she was invisible. She forced herself forward. The moment she crossed the threshold, conversation seemed to pause mid-sentence. A hostess in a sleek black dress approached, her professional smile wavering as her gaze traveled from Nina's face to her worn clothing. "Good evening," the hostess said carefully, as if choosing each word with precision. "Do you have a reservation?" Nina's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I think so. Someone arranged it. The name might be under Gallagher?" The hostess tapped her tablet, eyebrows lifting slightly. "Yes, I see it here. Table 14. She hesitated, then gestured toward the dining room. "Right this way." As Nina walked through the restaurant, she felt the weight of every stare. A woman in diamonds leaned toward her companion, whispering behind a manicured hand. A man in a three-piece suit pulled his briefcase closer as she passed. Nina kept her eyes down, heat flooding her cheeks. This was a mistake. She should leave before whoever arranged this saw her and realized they had made a terrible error. Then she reached table 14, and everything changed. The man who stood to greet her moved with quiet confidence, his charcoal suit perfectly tailored, his dark hair swept back from a face that was both striking and kind. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Deep brown, almost black, they held no judgment, no surprise, only recognition. "Nina," he said, as if her name was something precious. "I'm so glad you came." She stared at him, confusion mixing with the urge to run. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" "Not yet," he replied with a gentle smile, "but I'm hoping we will. I'm Victor Ashford." He pulled out her chair with practiced ease. "Please, sit." Nina lowered herself into the seat, feeling the soft cushion beneath her, so different from the hard benches and cold concrete she had grown accustomed to. Victor settled across from her, and she noticed he did not glance around at the watching diners. His attention remained completely on her. "You must think this is strange," Nina said, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't even know why I'm here. Someone at the shelter said I had a dinner invitation, but this must be some kind of mistake." "No mistake," Victor said quietly. "I asked someone to reach out to you specifically." "But why?" "You don't know me." Something flickered across his face, an emotion Nina could not quite name. "Perhaps not in the way you mean. But I know enough." A waiter appeared, and Victor ordered without consulting the menu. 2 bowls of French onion soup, warm bread, sparkling water. Simple choices in an elaborate place. When the waiter departed, Victor leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about yourself, Nina. What brings you to New York?" Nina's hands twisted in her lap beneath the table. Every instinct told her to deflect, to offer some sanitized version of her life. But something in Victor's steady gaze made her want to tell the truth. "I came here 5 years ago to study social work," she said slowly. "I wanted to help people. My mother raised me alone after my father left, and she always said the greatest gift we can give is making someone feel less alone. She paused, swallowing hard. She died when I was 20. Cancer. I used every penny I had saved for school to pay for her final treatments. After she passed, I tried to keep going, but everything fell apart. Lost my apartment, couldn't afford tuition, ended up on the streets. Victor listened without interrupting, without the pity Nina had learned to expect. When she finished, he simply nodded. "Your mother was right," he said, "about the gift of making people feel less alone. That's a rare kind of wisdom." "She was the best person I ever knew," Nina whispered, "and she raised someone just like her," Victor said. His words landed softly, but they carried weight. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Nina felt something inside her chest loosen, like a knot slowly coming undone. The soup arrived, steam rising from the bowls, and they ate in comfortable silence. Around them, the restaurant continued its elegant performance, but at table 14, something quieter and more genuine was unfolding. When the meal ended, Victor walked Nina to the door. The night air had grown colder, and she pulled her thin jacket tighter. Victor removed his wool scarf and held it out to her. "Please," he said when she started to protest. "The nights are brutal this time of year." Nina accepted it, the fabric still warm from his body. "I'll return it," she promised. "Keep it as long as you need," Victor replied. Then he added, his voice dropping lower, "I hope I'll see you again, Nina." She did not know what to say, so she simply nodded and walked into the darkness, the scarf wrapped around her neck like a promise she did not yet understand. Victor Ashford stood at the window of his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the city pulse with life below. The skyline stretched endlessly, steel and glass catching the afternoon sun, but his mind was elsewhere. It had been 3 days since the dinner, and Nina's face haunted him with increasing clarity. He had not told her the full truth. How could he? The story felt impossible even to him, separated as it was by 7 years and a lifetime of change. His assistant, Jameson, knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Ashford, the quarterly reports are ready for your review." Victor turned from the window. "Thank you, Jameson. Before you go, I need you to look into something for me, discreetly." Jameson's expression remained professionally neutral. "Of course, sir. There's a woman, Nina Gallagher. She mentioned staying at shelters in the area. I want to know which ones, and I want to know if there's anything we can do to help. Quietly. No press, no announcements." "Understood, sir." After Jameson left, Victor returned to the window. His reflection stared back at him, successful, polished, a far cry from the desperate young man he had once been. That version of himself felt like a ghost now, but the memory remained sharp. 7 years ago, Victor had been nobody. His startup had collapsed spectacularly, investors had vanished, and his business partner had fled with what little capital remained. Within months, Victor lost his apartment, then his dignity, then, very nearly, his will to continue. He had spent a brutal winter living in his car until even that was repossessed. One December night, as freezing rain turned the streets into rivers of ice, Victor had huddled in a doorway near Washington Square Park. Hypothermia was setting in, his body shaking so violently he could barely think. He remembered closing his eyes, wondering if this was how it ended. Then a voice, soft and concerned. "Hey, are you okay?" He had looked up to see a young woman crouching beside him. She wore a faded red jacket and carried a backpack that looked as worn as his spirit. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her green eyes were filled with worry. "I'm fine," Victor had lied through chattering teeth. She had not believed him. Without a word, she unzipped her jacket, revealing 2 layered sweaters beneath. She removed the outer sweater, a thick gray wool one, and draped it over his shoulders. "You need this more than I do," she said simply. "I can't take your clothes," Victor protested weakly. "You're not taking them. I'm giving them. There's a difference." She smiled, and it was the first genuine warmth he had felt in months. "There's a shelter 3 blocks east. St. Catherine's. They stay open all night when it's this cold. Promise me you'll go." Victor had nodded, clutching the sweater like a lifeline. When he looked up to thank her properly, she was already walking away, her figure disappearing into the rain. He never saw her again. But that sweater and the kindness it represented had stayed with him. He kept it carefully folded in a cedar chest in his apartment, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity could shine through. It took him 2 years to rebuild. He started small, consulting work that led to a new venture, then another. Each success felt like vindication, but also like debt. He had been saved by someone who had nothing, and that obligation never left him. When he saw Nina walk into Celestine 3 nights ago, recognition had struck him like lightning. The same green eyes, the same gentle presence. Older, more weathered, but unmistakably her. He had spent years wondering what happened to the woman in the red jacket, and suddenly there she was, still giving even when she had nothing left to give. The following Saturday, Victor stood in Riverside Park helping to distribute meals from a mobile kitchen his foundation funded. He wore jeans and a simple jacket, no different from the other volunteers. This was where he felt most himself, not in boardrooms but among people who understood struggle. As he handed a warm container to an elderly man, he caught movement at the edge of the park. Nina stood beneath a maple tree, half hidden, watching. She wore the scarf he had given her, wrapped twice around her neck against the chill. Victor's heart quickened. He wanted to call out, to go to her, but something stopped him. She looked uncertain, as if deciding whether to approach or disappear. He did not want to pressure her, did not want her to feel obligated. Instead, he carefully set aside a container with extra portions, along with a small thermos of hot chocolate. He placed them on a bench near where she stood, then deliberately turned away to help the next person in line. From the corner of his eye, he saw her approach the bench slowly. She picked up the container, noticed a folded note tucked beneath it. Victor had written only 4 words. "You matter. Stay warm." When he glanced back minutes later, she was gone. But the note remained on the bench, and beside it she had left something. A small folded paper. Victor retrieved it after the distribution ended. In neat handwriting, she had written, "Why are you being kind to me? I have nothing to offer you." Victor stood in the empty park, the note trembling in his hand. The answer was so simple and yet so complex. Because you saved me when I had nothing. Because kindness should never require repayment. Because you deserve to be seen. That evening, he returned to his office and drafted a letter. He wrote about the night 7 years ago, about the gray sweater and the woman who had given it without hesitation. He wrote about how that single act had changed the trajectory of his entire life, giving him hope when he had none left. He did not send it. Not yet. Nina was not ready to hear it. She was still learning to accept kindness without questioning her worth. So instead, Victor folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer, waiting for the right moment. Days passed. Nina continued her routine, volunteering at a community center, taking odd jobs when she could find them. Victor watched from a distance, not stalking but ensuring she was safe. His foundation quietly increased its support to the shelters where she stayed, improving conditions for everyone there. Then, one Thursday afternoon, Jameson entered Victor's office with unusual urgency. "Sir, there's been an incident. Nina Gallagher was taken to Mercy General Hospital about an hour ago." Victor was on his feet instantly. "What happened?" She collapsed while volunteering at the community center. Exhaustion and malnutrition, according to the initial report. "She's stable but being kept for observation." Victor grabbed his coat. "Which room?" 314, but sir, visiting hours." "I don't care about visiting hours." Victor's voice was firm but not harsh. "Have my car brought around immediately." 20 minutes later, Victor walked through the sterile hospital corridors, his heart pounding. He found room 314 and pushed the door open quietly. Nina lay in the bed, connected to an IV, her face pale against the white pillow. Her eyes were closed, and for a terrible moment, Victor was transported back to that rainy night 7 years ago, when he had been the one vulnerable and desperate. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. He did not reach for her hand, did not disturb her rest. He simply stayed, a silent presence, the way she had once been for him. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting monitors. Victor remained. As evening darkened the window, Nina's eyes fluttered open. She turned her head slowly, confusion crossing her face when she saw him. "Victor?" Her voice was hoarse. "I'm here," he said softly. "You're safe. You're going to be okay. How did you know I was here?" "I have my ways." He offered a gentle smile. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, embarrassed." She tried to sit up, but he raised a hand gently. "Rest. There's no rush." Nina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't understand why you keep showing up. I'm nobody. I have nothing." Victor leaned forward, his voice steady and sure. 7 years ago, on a night when I thought I might not survive until morning, someone gave me a gray sweater. She didn't know me. She didn't ask for anything. She just saw someone suffering and chose to help. That person saved my life, Nina. And that person was you. Nina stared at him, her breathing quickening. "What?" "Washington Square Park. December. You were wearing a red jacket." Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, that was you." Victor nodded. "I never forgot. I built everything I have now on the foundation of that kindness. And when I saw you walk into Celestine, I knew immediately. Some faces you never forget." Tears streamed down Nina's cheeks. "I gave away so many things over the years. I never knew if any of it mattered." "It all mattered," Victor said firmly. "Every single act, but especially that one. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me that strangers could be angels. Now let me return that gift. Not because you need saving, but because you deserve to be cared for the way you've cared for others." Nina reached out and Victor took her hand. Her grip was weak but sincere. "I don't know how to accept help," she whispered. "Then let's learn together," Victor replied. "One day at a time." Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent and cold. But in room 314, two people who had saved each other across time sat in the quiet understanding that sometimes the greatest acts of love are simply showing up and staying. Spring arrived slowly in New York, coaxing green buds from winter-bare branches and filling the air with the promise of renewal. Nina stood at the window of her small studio apartment, still marveling at the fact that she had a window to look through, walls that belonged to her, a door she could lock from the inside. 3 months had passed since the hospital. 3 months of transformation that felt both miraculous and terrifying. Victor had not swept in with grand gestures or overwhelming charity. Instead, he had offered something more valuable: steady, consistent support. He helped her find the apartment through a housing program his foundation funded. He connected her with a job training program that recognized her years of volunteer work as valuable experience. He showed up week after week, asking nothing except that she try. And Nina had tried. She was now working at the community center officially, coordinating volunteer programs and helping others navigate the systems she had once struggled through herself. The pay was modest, but it was hers, earned through her own efforts. Her apartment was small, just one room with a kitchenette and a tiny bathroom, but she had decorated it with care. Second-hand furniture she had refinished herself, plants she tended daily, photographs of her mother on the bookshelf beside a growing collection of books. It was not much, but it was home. The knock on her door came at exactly 6 o'clock, as it had every Saturday evening for the past 2 months. Nina opened it to find Victor standing there with a bag of groceries and his familiar gentle smile. "I thought we could cook together tonight," he said. "I found fresh tomatoes at the market." This had become their ritual. Victor would bring ingredients, and they would prepare simple meals together, talking about their weeks, their hopes, their fears. It was domestic and ordinary, and Nina had come to treasure it more than any fancy restaurant dinner. As they chopped vegetables side by side in her small kitchen, Nina felt a question rising that she had been holding back for weeks. "Victor, why haven't you tried to kiss me?" His knife paused mid-cut. He looked at her with those dark eyes that had learned to see through her defenses. "Because I'm not trying to possess you, Nina. I'm trying to know you." "I'm not made of glass," she said softly. "I won't break if you touch me." Victor set down the knife and turned to face her fully. "I know you won't break. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. But I also know you've spent years surviving, being invisible, learning not to expect anything. I want you to have time to remember what it feels like to be wanted for who you are, not for what you can give or what someone can take." Nina's eyes stung with unexpected tears. "And what if I'm ready now? What if I want to stop waiting?" Victor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "Then tell me what you want, Nina. Use your words. I need to hear you choose this." "I want you to see me," she whispered. "Really see me. Not the person I was or the person I might become. Just me. Right now, in this moment." "I do see you," Victor said, his thumb brushing away a tear. "I see someone brave and kind and beautiful. I see someone who has survived impossibly hard things and still has room in her heart to care for others. I see the woman I've been falling in love with since the moment she walked into that restaurant, terrified but refusing to run." "You love me?" Nina's voice cracked. "Yes," Victor said simply. "I love you. Not because you saved me years ago, and not because I want to save you now. I love you because of who you are. The way you listen to people, really listen. The way you notice small kindnesses and remember them. The way you're learning to take up space in the world again without apologizing for existing." Nina closed the distance between them, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like a question being asked. Then Victor's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something certain and real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nina laughed softly. "I've been waiting for that for 3 months." "It was worth the wait," Victor murmured against her hair. They finished cooking dinner, but the atmosphere had shifted into something warmer, more intimate. As they ate, Nina found herself talking about things she had never shared with anyone. Her childhood dreams, her mother's final days, the shame and fear that had defined her years on the streets. Victor listened to all of it, holding her hand across the small table, offering understanding without trying to fix what could not be fixed. "I used to think," Nina said quietly, "that I didn't deserve good things, that somehow I had failed so completely that I had forfeited the right to happiness. Every time someone was kind to me, I waited for them to realize their mistake and leave." "And now?" Victor asked. "Now I'm learning that deserving has nothing to do with it. Life isn't fair, but sometimes it's kind. Sometimes people choose to love us not because we've earned it, but because they want to." She squeezed his hand. "You taught me that." "You taught it to me first," Victor reminded her. "That night in the park, you didn't ask if I deserved help. You just helped." They moved to the small couch, fitting together in the comfortable way of people learning each other's rhythms. Nina rested her head on Victor's shoulder, feeling safe in a way she had not felt in years. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I mess this up? What if I'm too broken?" "You're not broken," Victor said firmly. "You're healing. And healing isn't linear. There will be hard days. Days when the past feels too heavy and the future too uncertain. But I'll be here for those days too. Not to fix you, but to remind you that you're not alone anymore." Nina tilted her head up to look at him. "Promise?" "I promise," Victor said and sealed it with a kiss. As the evening deepened into night, they talked about the future. Victor shared his dream of expanding his foundation's work, creating more programs that offered genuine pathways out of homelessness rather than temporary band-aids. Nina talked about possibly returning to school, finishing the social work degree she had abandoned years ago. "I could help people better if I had the credentials," she said. "I understand what they're going through in a way most social workers can't. I've lived it." "You'd be extraordinary," Victor said with quiet certainty. "And if you decide to pursue it, I'll support you however I can. Not with money, but with time, with encouragement, with belief." Nina smiled. "You already give me all of that." As Victor prepared to leave later that night, Nina walked him to the door. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips, each one a promise and a blessing. Same time next week? He asked. Actually, Nina said, surprising herself with her boldness, would you want to spend tomorrow together? We could go to the park, maybe visit the museum. I'd like to spend more time with you, not just Saturday evenings. Victor's smile could have lit the entire city. I would love that. I'll pick you up at 10? It's a date, Nina agreed. After he left, Nina stood in her small apartment, feeling it expand with possibility. She was not healed completely. The scars from years of survival remained. But she was learning that love was not about being perfect or whole. It was about being willing to be seen, to be vulnerable, to let someone else choose you again and again. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Victor. Thank you for seeing me. His response came immediately. Thank you for letting me. Sleep well, Nina. Dream of good things. Nina climbed into her bed, that luxury of softness and safety she had once thought lost forever. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she did exactly that. She dreamed of good things, of laughter and shared meals, of hands held and futures built, of a love that asked nothing except that she keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that she was worth choosing. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, but inside apartment 4C, Nina Gallagher slept peacefully, wrapped in the knowledge that she was no longer invisible, no longer alone. She had been seen, truly seen, and chosen, not despite her brokenness but including all of it. And that, she realized as sleep claimed her, was the greatest gift anyone had ever given her. The story of Victor and Nina was not about rescue. It was about recognition. Two people who had saved each other across time, finally finding their way back together, choosing love not as an escape from pain, but as a companion through it. And in that choice, they found something neither had dared hope for, a home in each other's hearts.